Yeah.
Now I'm back at Audarya, and I just started writing an article on the implications of Rupa Goswami's verse from Vidagdha Madhava that glorifies the deity of his drama, a verse that that Krishna's Kaviraj also chose to use as his Ashirvad verse, or the verse that gives a blessing to the readers in his Mangalacharan. So this is in relation to the book that I'm writing with Sundar Gopal and Brindharanya and others regarding, I think it'll be called the nature of the self in Gaudiya Vedanta. So I was able to do some very good research on that verse from many different angles, and I started writing it this morning. I'm enthused about it. That's me, what I'm up to. Let's hear what's on everybody else's mind and take the questions.
Good. Thank you so much. If Krishna Chaitanya is here online, he can ask the question that he had last time. Otherwise, we go with Ramakeli. Krishna Chaitanya? Okay, so we go with Ramakeli, and if Krishna Chaitanya comes, we will pick from there.
Okay, so Ramakeli is asking, or she's saying, Pranams, dear Guru Maharaj. I have a question related to the famous Bhagavad-Gita verse 934. Always think of me, be devoted to me, worship me and offer obeisance to me. Having dedicated your mind and body to me, you will certainly come to me. I am curious if Krishna's words, think of me, can also be understood as be with me. Sometimes I have moments in japa when I feel I want to just stay and be more present rather than continue chanting at that specific moment. And you have frequently advised us not to become neurotic. So thus this question arises. From all my heart, thank you for your presence and guidance in my life.
So if I understand correctly, the question is during japa, sometimes you're stopping the japa and just kind of experiencing the serenity of Krishna's presence that has been resulted from the chanting. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And then she is construing that to be being with Krishna rather than thinking of Krishna. My answer would be is that thinking of Krishna is being with Krishna. But I suppose that they could also be separated, the two, in that meditating on Krishna and thinking in that way, with a meditative mind, is one thing, and then Krishna appearing outside of the meditation, as he does, and gives darshan to exalted devotees. You could make a difference there. And Sanatana Goswami has labored, I think, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita to make a distinction between meditating on Bhagavan and having the direct darshan. But I think that Ramkeli's japa is not quite that far along that Krishna's appearing before her, but still, I think it's fine to make some distinction there between thinking of Krishna and feeling Krishna's presence in however specific or broad of a sense that may manifest, and refer to that as being with Krishna rather than thinking of Krishna. I think that in either case, being with Krishna is the desired result of thinking of Krishna, because that's what he says in the verse. Think of me, become my devotee, and surely you'll come to me. So all good. Think of Krishna, be with Krishna. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Next question is from Mayapur Chandra.
And he writes, Jai Guru Maharaj. I have a question in the context of Vaishnava aparadha. Is it possible that someone who committed this aparadha in a previous life is now experiencing its effects? For example, this person has come into the association of devotees in this life is initiated, but seems to be somehow held back from fully engaging in the practice. She herself says that she's not sure whether she believes in Krishna, yet she feels naturally drawn to him, his devotees, the Guru, etc. Could this be the result of Vaishnava aparadha? If so, how can one become free from its effects, considering it happened in a previous life? How to counteract it? How to make amends?
I have often considered persons who kind of hover around the devotees, the Sangha, can't quite enter, can't quite take up the practice entirely in a committed way, but have a strong affinity for it, to be possible examples of such, of aparadha, Vaishnava aparadha, perhaps in the past. And each case, of course, is different, but I think that's a reasonable conjecture. And so it may apply to the person that you're speaking of. With regard to how to resolve that, given that the offense was committed in a previous life, I think that that the solution to that is alluded to by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, perhaps in Madhuri Kadambini. If, let's say, for example, in this life we offend a guru of a particular sangha, and then he or she passes away, and then we come to realize that we had conducted ourselves in an offensive way, and we want to remedy that, then the solution is to take shelter of the dust of the feet, if you will, poetically speaking. And I think that Vishwanath uses this language of that devotee, which has manifested in the form of his or her devotees or other disciples. There was an incident like this, as I recall, that occurred in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Gaudiya Math, where one prominent devotee was thought to have was repudiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and I believe the Thakur didn't want to see that devotee. And subsequently, the Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, passed away, and that devotee sought to remedy his offense, as he thought of it as such, in different ways. But ultimately, he got the blessing of the other god brothers, god sisters, and so forth, and it was remedied. He went on to become a great acharya in devotee Vaishnavism, as I recall. But the problem is perhaps exasperated by the way in which you're speaking about it. Who was the devotee in the previous life? In other words, and if the offense was committed in a previous life rather than in this life. But I think that the principle holds that if we take shelter of devotees who are in a very healthy way revering all Vaishnavas, and get their grace and their blessings, who in an extended sense, whether they're disciples of that guru or whether even it was a guru who was offended, I think this would probably pertain to a superlative devotee having offended her in a previous life. But again, I think that taking shelter of the devotees in a particular sangha that devotee may be hovering around and is attracted to but can't quite commit, and seeking their blessings, it might be worth suggesting to such a person that this may be in the past. Perhaps if one has a close relationship with them and the person wants a solution resolution to their dilemma, if you will. That they should be encouraged along these lines. Certainly, I would say that with the generous feelings of the Sangha, of the devotees, and cross Sangha, I would imagine it would apply as well to such a devotee, that with their blessing, to engage and participate and so forth, that it would do much, if not everything, to remedy the offense that was made. We pray to Krishna. Krishna says, I can't remedy you. You have to go to the devotee. The devotee's not there. You go to the devotee of the devotees, is the idea in principle. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Next, we have our dear Braj Sundari.
Okay, and she writes, I have a question. In the second verse of his Prapanna Jivamritam, Srila Sridhar Maharaj offers his pranams to the deity called Gaura Sarasvati. The verse says, I make my obeisances unto the deity Gaura Sarasvati, the personified message of the Golden Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose bodily luster is of beautiful golden hue, like that of the self-same Gaura Sundar, who is the personal expansion of the Supreme Lord Gaura Hari, who is always intoxicated by preaching the message of the Golden Lord, and whose divine beauty blooms in revelation of Lord Gauranga's mercy potency. So, end quote. So I'm wondering if Sridhar Maharaj speaks of his spiritual master in this verse, or there is indeed a deity of Lord Gauranga called Gaura Sarasvati. Also, there's a footnote saying that this verse can have several meanings. Could Guru Maharaj explain the meaning of this verse, please? Thank you.
Well, I think that the main meaning is that he's speaking about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Pujapat Sridhar Maharaj used to sometimes refer to the Sampradaya as Gaura Saraswati Sampradaya, from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Bhaktisiddhanta. This is the Sampradaya that we're in, giving it with a broad brush, but emphasizing the person of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his powerful, extraordinary contribution following in the wake of and in the teachings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The two, it's kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will, that set in motion a very powerful wave of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And but other than that, you have to read the verse again and probably have to look at it a couple of times to draw out other meanings from it. But he seemed to say it at one point, the message of Gaura's teachings that are a manifestation of Divya Saraswati, the divine knowledge, if you will. So he may have been also, that may be also another meaning that's drawn out, that kind of the deity of the Gauravani itself, which is a divine knowledge. So sometimes I think in Brahma Samhita it's described that Brahma received from blessing of Divya Saraswati. Anyway, something along those lines. Gauravani personified. But ultimately he is speaking about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. What else?
Thank you. Next is Shraddha.
And she writes, I would like to ask a question about Radha and devotional service, but only if there are no others asking questions this week. Oh, okay. So she doesn't know. She didn't write the question here. It seems that she wants to.
Oh,
If she.
Shraddha, are you on?
Haribol. Haribol, yes, I am on the phone. Yes.
Okay.
I would just like to know, Hare Krishna, Pranam. I was reading in, hang on a second, I'll just start my video as well. I'm on phone and video. I'd just like to know, because I was reading The Art of Eternal Love, Bhakti, it just says that Srimati Radharani is the queen of Bhakti. It's a kind of a basic question, really, I should know, but it's just that I was reading it recently, and it just says that to perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani, and devotees in Vrindavana put themselves under the care of Radharani to achieve perfection in devotional service. And basically, because she represents Bhakti, I was just wondering, is there anything else that we could consider, just to say that to ourselves that she represents Bhakti itself, or that she not exactly, she's more than a personification, I know, but does she represent Bhakti in our minds? Can we think of her that way?
Well, she's been described as you mentioned there in the text that you're reading, as Bhakti Devi, so that the goddess of Bhakti. She is the fullest expression of Bhakti personified, sometimes referred to as Mahabhav Swarupini. And so in that sense, she's a leader of all the devotees and exemplifies or personifies the fullest measure of devotion. But the manifestation of her, of the Ladini Shakti, that aspect, these are energy, the Shakti of Ananda, if you will, by which Krishna relishes himself, the one, Krishna becoming two, as Radha and Krishna, and their interaction. She, in that context, is thought to also personify or preside over, let us say, the Ladini Shakti, the Shakti by which Krishna experiences the full measure of Ananda. And so as this manifests in the devotee, we sometimes think, and I've said there's a little bit of Radha in every devotee. I'll say it another thing that comes to mind, and that is that Prabhupada used to say that all the worlds teach that God is the most worshipable deity, all the religions, I should say, and we teach who is the worshipable deity of God. So even those that teach about Krishna's supremacy in other sampradayas may not have this insight that Krishna is worshiping Radharani, which is a focus, of course, in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So even Krishna is devoted to Radharani. So she's the deity that, I don't know much more you could say about it, but presides over Bhakti Devi, and so we hold her, above our head. What else?
Thank you. Thank you. So next is Tuomas from Finland. Is a bit long question.
Yes. Let's see here. Pranam Maharaj, I would like to know what, in your perspective, is the biggest change that happens when one gets Harinam initiation? What happens to practice? And as a follow-up question, what kind of requirements you have if one would wish to become your disciple? This topic has been on my mind a lot lately. I've been attending ISKCON events and lately also your pupils' gatherings here in Finland. I've been attending the latest Swami Calls, and I have to say that I'm very much fond of your way of explaining this topic with such humane, in a such humane and empathetic way. I had a long list of questions, but you have answered those during the calls, even though those particular questions weren't necessarily even asked. I decided finally to reach out to you today since I saw Bir Krishna Goswami Maharaj initiating new disciples, and I got very emotional and admitted that in my heart, I have made the decision to aspire for initiation already. Not to write a novel here, I'll leave things like I leave it like this, but I'm happy to open my background and thoughts more. Nevertheless, I want to express my deepest gratitude for your writings and insights. Chanting and reading the scriptures have made such a huge impact on my life, but to find this kind of setting that resonates so much makes my brain do a backflip. Respectfully, Thomas.
Well, I'll be quite honest with you. It's always humbling to receive these types of messages and questions, if you will, introductions, and I get them here and there fairly often, usually sent by email, but it's fine to have expressed that over this media. So it's humbling to me, and it speaks to me about the necessity or the result that arises from what I do. I am excited about Gaudiya Vaishnavism, its implications, its theology, its philosophy, my experience of it, and so I live within that, and it overflows me in such a way that I like to speak about it, obviously, with whomever I'm associated with, and so forth, and that. Really amounts largely to instructions about what bhakti is, how to practice it, what its goal is, what its philosophical principles it's based on, and so forth. So that's siksha. And as Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj used to say, if one gives siksha, then he or she is likely to capture a prospective sishya, which means disciple. And then the disciple, being touched by the siksha, captures the guru through diksha. In other words, the disciple, person who has been touched by the siksha, an example set and so forth, comes forward and makes their case. You've done this to me. You've ruined my life. Now you have to help me go through it. You've made it impossible for me to pursue material life, but I'm weak unto myself to pursue the spiritual life or to forego entirely material life. So now, but that's my position. So you have to help me. It's basically what you're saying in essence. And so by siksha, the guru captures persons, and then he becomes captured by diksha. So I mean, it's a result of what I do. So it's humbling when it happens, and I feel obliged, to honor that and do everything I can to help the disciple. And from the disciple's point of view, vantage point, becoming initiated, it puts them much more on my mind, I would say, than otherwise. There is a statement that was made that I used to really like, I still do, by a godbrother of mine, that applies to your question as to what is the significance of receiving Harinam, the blessing to chant the holy name. What comes of it? I mean, he put it in a broad way, but it's very beautiful. His name was Vishnu John Maharaj. He passed away, but he said that he used to say the distance that we have traveled thus far in our material sojourn which is said to be anadi, to comment on it, beginningless. Through many species of life, we've experienced the world in the air, underwater, on four legs, on no legs, through so many species of life, and we've come to the human form, which is rare amongst the many other forms of life comparatively, and that distance to come to the human life is a long, long distance. But he used to say, the distance that we have traveled thus far in our material sojourn is much longer than the distance we have to travel from this point upon taking shelter of our Guru to the finish. That distance is very short comparatively. Even we may talk about it sometimes as in a ways that may sound very long. If you compare it to beginningless forever material existence, it's very, very short in comparison. So it's very significant to be vouched for, if you will, by a qualified Vaishnava, which is basically what takes place. It's important, as I often say, to conduct ourselves in such a way that it has, what do I say? It is of consequence to our Guru or to an advanced Vaishnava. And so an approach like this, of course, is acting in a way that's of spiritual consequence. It matters to an advanced devotee, and so it's very progressive, if you will, and correct for you to make such an approach. And again, the significance of being a card-carrying, if you will, member of the Sampradaya is everything. To me, it's everything to have been initiated by Prabhupada. Of course, we have 2 initiations to receive the name and to receive the mantra, but who receives the name will undoubtedly receive the mantra as well. And to me, it was like to secure an anchor in my life, to be on a short leash, if you will, on a long walk back to Godhead, to be on the mind, if you will, of such a person as in my case, Prabhupada. It means everything to me. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if I covered everything. It was a long question. What is the consequence of getting initiated? And was there a second part to that?
Yeah, he was asking what are the requirements to become your disciple?
Oh, yeah. Requirements. Well, the requirements are largely that the chemistry is in place, which is what I'm talking about. And the formalization of that is what you're asking about. So the main thing is in place. The formalization really depends upon the particular guru, what he or she may feel is a requirement. And for myself, I want the chemistry to be in place. I want the person, for the most part, to have heard from me, to have listened. There's many merchants, if you will, in the marketplace of the holy name, and this is different climate than when, for example, I took initiation of Prabhupada. He was the only merchant in the market. Now there are quite a few, and to just sort through them and hear and so forth, and really develop the chemistry, if you will, for hearing from me is the main qualification that I would like to see in place. Then on top of that, of course, I ask the devotees to chant a prescribed number of rounds, and and I give them the liberty to determine what number they can chant regularly, and I expect them to follow that and increase over time. And also, of course, I expect them to avoid intoxication and participating in prostitution, as the Bhagavatam says, when Prabhupada's used the term a little differently. They make a concerted effort to harness their sexuality through meaningful relationship with a significant other, otherwise known as marriage. Put it in a word, and to make an effort to. As I say, everybody agrees that urge should be harnessed. You just draw the line in different places. So if it's harnessed by way of expressing such emotional, physical intimacy with a significant other, then it leads to, it turns out to be more than it would otherwise, more meaningful, if you will. So to bring meaning to our sexuality beyond immediate sensual gratification, and beyond the perceived extension of ourselves in the form of children, to give it a spiritual character in our line. Krishna says in the Gita, "Kamosmi Bharatarshava," that kind of sexual intimacy that is conducted according to the Dharma, that is a manifestation of myself. So somewhere along those lines, if that's a concern, Bhagavatam mentions gambling. So one should have an honest way of livelihood, which is also purifying in a general sense. I said a hard day's work, a good day's work, is an honest day's work, has a sattvic type of result. So that's important, and also to avoid the unnecessary acts of violence. It's hard to avoid altogether, just to breathe and move in the world. Others will be sacrificed as a result of that. Therefore, jivo jivasya jivanam. Bhagavatam says one living being is food for another, but we draw the line in a particular place with regard to diet, as you probably well know, vegetarian diet. So those things should be on one's radar, and one should embrace them as meaningful and helpful in avoiding the participation. Well, there are positives that avoid, but avoiding those things, that those positives, if you will, result in distances one from the further implications of those types of activities, like intoxication and meat eating and so forth. They have other implications that are I would say detrimental, or will get in the way of the one-mindedness of that spiritual pursuit sadhana is centered on. So that's a brief talk on that. I've given many lectures on initiation. I just gave one in Poland that you might want to listen to as well. But I appreciate your sincerity, Thomas. You'll be my second Thomas from Finland. Another one is living here with me, Gurnishta. He came once and never left, so he's a good brother for you to look to as an example. I hope that I answered your questions. Again, I'm humbled by your your question and your feelings. I'll do everything I can to help you.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Next question is from Lalita Saki. She's asking, what is the proper honorific for addressing a woman sannyasi?
Well, I mean, there are any number of them. Srimati, so-and-so, Maharani. I suppose if you use Maharaj for some, you can use Maharani, Swamini, Sri Gangamata Goswamini, we hear, rather than Goswami, Goswamini. It might depend on where she received, from who received the sannyas order from, and what name that Guru gave her, and but Srimati, Maharani, Goswamini, Swamini. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's what comes to mind when you ask.
Thank you. So next,
There, can I follow up?
Please do.
Okay. We were given a message this morning on the book club that a devotee in, I think, South America, Maharani, has taken sannyas, and she's been given the name, let me remember, Maharani Krishna Bhakti Goswamini. So, sannyasis, we call them, Maharaj,
So Maharani.
So what do we call? So Maharani?
Maharani. Yeah, yeah. That seems fine.
All righty, thank you.
Okay. Maharani ki jai. Maharani ki jai.
so next is Chandramukhi.
Okay, and she writes, Dear Guru Maharaj, I have a question about the translation of the word gopi, as it can be translated as cowherd girl or milkmaid. I was wondering if each of these words have a different connotation. Do they evoke something particular to you? This question is in the context that in Spanish, I think that some of the beauty of these words might be lost in translation. Thank you very much.
Well, any cowherd girl is a milk maiden. I don't know what either would mean in Spanish. Vaquera, so it must be a cow herder, but that could have a very different connotation, perhaps in Latin America, than what we're thinking of in India, where cows are not in religious circles are not abused. Gopi, milk maiden might be better, therefore. But it doesn't, in and of itself, speak about a person, a woman who lives in the village and takes care of cows. So you've got a kind of dilemma there, I guess. A cowherd girl is not like a cowgirl in the United States in the conquering of the West and the killing of Indians, Native Americans, and so forth. Cowgirl, that would be. But I think that perhaps the context of the text in which it's translating would make it clear. Maybe you could use cowgirl, or was it cowherd girl, or milk maiden, one or the other, and then make a footnote the first time that you use it in a book, and explain the meaning. Maybe that would be the best way to go without hearing from you any other Spanish alternatives and the implications of them. That would be hard for me to pick a particular word, but particular. Well, you're asking for the English translation of gopi, yeah, the Spanish translation. So, what words are available? So anyway, I think maybe that would be a way to resolve it. Make a footnote, call her a cowherd girl, and then explain briefly in the footnote what a cowherd girl means in the context of the culture that these texts are referring to, where Krishna Lila is manifest. What else?
Thank you. Next is Vaishnava Patidas from Chile.
And he writes, Dandavats, Guru Maharaj, and devotees. I want to know if you could share a little about the humor and attitude needed to successfully distribute books and connect with people. We're about to go on a trip to northern Chile with the Sankirtan group, and a few words from you would be very inspiring.
Humor?
Yeah, the humor and attitude needed to successfully distribute books and connect with people.
Well, my secret of success, if you will, was always to think that in going out for circulating Prabhupada's books, I was taking advantage of the opportunity to purify myself, to grow spiritually, even with the thought that I might meet someone that knows more than me, about any number of things, even possibly about spiritual life. Could meet a devotee who was lost for some time and resurfacing, if you will, who had gone further down the road than oneself, and you became the catalyst by which he or she resurfaced. So those things happen. So this was always my idea. I would stand before the deities in Los Angeles and chant in the morning after the morning program and breakfast until I got very inspired and taste, and then I would go out and circulate the books. And with a humble attitude, as I say, not that I was a big book distributor in those days. There was no such thing as a big book distributor. That was something that kind of developed later, as to a large extent as my success in practically speaking, in terms of distributing the books, started to overflow into others taking up that service and succeeding in considerably. When I started, there were other devotees distributing books here and there, a few, but we had a large warehouse full of books that I think many of the devotees wondered, what are we going to do with all those books? So I guess I say my approach was always to think that I'm going to, for my own purification and as a service to my guru, this is what he desires. And with regard to other people, I learned so many things from people, talking to them. I asked them where they're from, what do they do, and I would learn about things that I never heard about, and put that into my file, if you will, and sometimes pull it out and use it to my advantage, or the advantage of the service required when meeting a similar person. So those are my basic ideas, thoughts, spirit. If you're taking humor to be, the mellow, if you will, or the spirit of it. If you want to talk about humor in terms of it's comedy. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Lightheartedness. Does it apply? It's quite a serious business, circulating the books, representing them. I took it very seriously. I didn't find it to be humorous. There were many humorous events that could be discussed afterwards amongst the devotees in terms of what they experienced and so forth. So I think in that context, in that sense, the humor kind of comes as a more a reflection back, even on the difficulties of the service and so forth. Oftentimes our difficulties of today are service humor, of tomorrow. So those are my thoughts on the word humor. But otherwise, as I say, it was always a very serious thing for me. And I didn't go out thinking of how many numbers of books I would distribute, but just that I was just doing the service and I was making my effort and sharing the knowledge with people. And that was in my own personal interest to purify myself. I think those are good thoughts, a good way to orient oneself and ensure that you are successful in the result that you're desiring, which is not necessarily to distribute so many books, but to purify yourself. Prabhupada used to say that the books are the basis, and he said, and purity is the force. So strive for your own purity, and the secondary result will be that others also share in that, and that should take the form of circulating a larger number of books than you could by any other shorthand, less than fully spiritual approach to the matter might result in. You might sell more books, but get less purified if you look at it the wrong way. And the result you want is your own personal purification. That's not a selfish thing, because purity is the force. So the more you become purified, the more you have the force to influence positively and spiritually others. So you have to think that the book I'm giving out, I need to represent the book personally, as far as possible. Obviously, your exchange with someone tends to be rather short sometimes when selling a book, but your own persona is at least half of what sells a book, other than the other half being the book itself. I know there were times that I sold books just by the ecstasy that I was in. People looked at me and thought, they almost asked me, what are you about? You have a book that you want to give out? I had experiences like that. So, or with the right attitude, you'll realize you'll say things about the book that are from the book itself in ways that mesmerize persons. I had many experiences like that. People just stunned at the words that came out of mouth, and they were paraphrasing verses from the Bhagavatam itself, about itself. So these are my thoughts. I hope it's successful. And Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtan. Glories to your Sankirtan party and to all the devotees on it. We offer our humble pranams to them.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I just want to say that the word in Spanish, humor, which is like humor, translates better into mood. So I think
mood. Okay, I think that's what he's referring to. That's what I thought. Yeah. What mood? What mood? Yeah.
So
okay, good. We covered that then.
Thank you. Next question is from Madan Gopa.
And he writes, Guru Maharaj, could you share some of your initial thoughts about how the Chaitanya Charitamrita Ashirvad Shloka is applying to the subject of articles you are working on the nature of the self in Gaudiya Vedanta?
Yes, I write on that because sometimes it is thought that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is said, well, here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, or Rupa Goswami, I should say, says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give the highest Unatojala Rasa, so Bhakti Sriyam, the highest. Ujjwal here means the brightest or brilliant, but it's also a word that Rupa Goswami has used to refer to Madhurya Rasa. So Ujjwal Nilmani, for example, is one of the names of one of his books on all about Madhurya Rasa. So it's thought improperly and appropriately to refer to the fullest form of Ujjwal Rasa, which is the bhava of Radha, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to experience. And in the context of experience it, well, it's being distributed. And so sometimes it's cited as a verse that is thought to definitively make the case that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is about solely and exclusively about distributing Radha Bhav to anybody and everybody. And because it's a gift, it's something that nobody has. And because it's a form of bhakti, the highest form of bhakti, it means they have no bhakti. There's no bhakti inherent in any sense, in any shape or form, in anyone. So this is a misunderstanding of what's being said in the verse on a couple of counts. And for that, we can look to the commentary on the verse itself, provided by Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami, which is in the third, it's the third of his Mangal-charan verses. And for each verse, he gives a chapter, or verse under several of them together, he gives a chapter on. But anyway, this verse there's an entire chapter on the third chapter of the Adi Leela. So if we look at that Leela, we find evidence there that it contradicts that perspective that I mentioned, and there's a later day commentary also on that verse that's attributed to Jiva Goswami. But some years ago, I gave it to Brigupad, my disciple, to translate, and he upon looking at it, he thought it's probably not written by Jiva Goswami, which I kind of thought already. But he also mentioned that there's a verse in the commentary that was penned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary on Narottam's book. What's Narottam's book called? I can't remember. Prema Bhakti Chandrika, I think. So that would mean that the commentary, it's a Sanskrit commentary, wasn't composed by Jiva Goswami, but it's probably somewhere in the 1700s, a century after Jiva Goswami. But that's not uncommon that someone would be a follower of Jiva Goswami in heart and soul and attribute a commentary to him, just as many texts were compiled by others, but they put the name Vyasa on because they feel that the book was empowered by him, and so forth. Vyasa is said to be editor of the Vedic books, texts. Obviously, there are other people compiling them, but they're all referred to him in his empowerment. So it's not uncommon that takes place. And it may be the humility of a devotee rather than some type of plagiarism or attempt to deceive people. But in any case, I think that it represents a commentary from a time in which this controversy, whether bhakti is inherent or not, was not out and about. It was not a controversy at the time. In our book, we've located we've looked historically and located whereabout the controversy begins. It certainly doesn't begin at the beginning of the sampradaya, which is a sampradaya arising out of the context of Vaishnava Vedanta, Vedanta in general, and Vaishnava Vedanta in particular. And so there's no controversy in all of the Vaishnava sampradayas, or even in Shankar's non-Vaishnava sampradaya, that what is to be attained is inherent but unmanifest in the jiva. They all concur on that emphatically in so many ways. And this is basically a very core tenet of Vedanta, which would be that material life is about acquisition, an attempt to add something onto myself in order to make myself whole, given that I don't quite feel whole. Well, the whole Vedanta perspective is don't add anything onto yourself, but look within yourself to bring out what's there. And there may be much that's not manifest, and that only a certain method will cause it to manifest. Someone asked the other day that if the jiva has a swabhava, I don't like that idea because it means somebody has a swabhava to merge into Brahman. But no, merging into Brahman requires a particular sadhana, and it's not the sadhana that will cause one's relational quality as a servant of Vishnu to arise, to come to the surface. Just like I've said before, you can boil milk, you can freeze milk, you can do any number of things with it, but only if you churn it will you get the butter that's inherent in it, but unmanifest. So there's a particular sadhana, which is bhakti, obviously, by which you can bring out the relational quality of the self. The self has different qualities, but they all really serve its relational quality. And by that I mean that it's a servant inherently of Bhagavan. This is it's her, I should say, swabhav, the jiva swabhav. Mm-hmm. So, at any rate, in that, so this is a core tenet of Vedanta. So it didn't begin at that time. It's something like almost it's like assumed, it's understood. It doesn't need to be emphasized, but we need to emphasize the bestowal of bhakti. That has to be bestowed such that like attracts like. That you put in bhakti, bhakti comes out. You're through the siksha. You're bringing out in the diksha. You're bringing out the unmanifest bhakti, bringing it to the surface. Anyway, that's obviously what the book's about. But in this commentary that I mentioned, attributed to Jiva Goswami, whoever wrote it, it represents the current of the times and how this verse was understood. And it's mentioned there that Mahaprabhu gave bhakti, not that he gave Ujjvala Bhakti or Madhurya Ras to anybody and everybody, but he gave according to the vasanas of both the immediate advanced devotees in his circle, who were implications, who were sadhakas, siddhas in a sadhaka, in a lila as sadhakas, and so they had vasanas or psychological predispositions towards a particular rasa, like Murari Gupta. He had a predisposition towards Ram Bhakti. Mahaprabhu didn't give him Madhurya Rasa. He brought out his Ram Bhakti. And he actually took Murari Gupta when he came to Jagannath Puri and set him up before all the devotees and praised him profusely for his bhava. And anyway, the commentary says both the intimate circle of devotees and the newcomer devotees, according to their vasanas, Mahaprabhu gave. And the vasanas will be tendencies that arise from one's own individual swabhav in relation to the external influence of bhakti. Why one devotee will be drawn towards one type of bhakti rather than another has something to do with who they are, not in their material sense and material vasanas, but in the vasanas, the impressions that will develop through participation in bhakti over time will correspond with the ones that with the swabhav that one has to the idea. And he's written extensively about this, but so he says that Mahaprabhu gave according to the vasanas of the devotees, both newcomers and eternal associates. And then there's so much to be said about that, if you will. And then moving forward in Bhakti Vinod Thakur's commentary on the verse in his Amrita Prabhava Bhasya, he's just very clear about it. Mahaprabhu didn't give Madhurya Rasa to everybody. He's coming to taste Madhurya Rasa. He's making this Madhurya Rasa available through a sampradaya and a systematic teaching that follows him in a way that's never been done before. This is extraordinary. And those who have that swabhav will be able to take advantage of it in ways that it wasn't available previously. It says, the verse says he comes once rarely, and Krishna says means once in a life of, once in a day of Brahma. It's a long time. So some things are worth waiting for is a way to look at it for those of you who have that kind of swabhav and attraction, worth waiting for, indeed. And he says that he's not giving it to everybody, but only to those who have that nature. Otherwise, he's giving bhakti relative to the predisposition, inherent swabhav of each and every individual jiva who he comes in contact with and who's in a sampradaya. And we see that. Mahaprabhu came in contact with different people and they all didn't develop Gopi Bhav. He didn't give Gopi Bhav to everybody. So these are some evidences to support and explain the verse properly, one that's been misunderstood. So those are just some preliminary basic thoughts. Does that help? I hope so.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. We are a bit over time, but would you like to answer one last question on your Shikshastakam commentary?
Okay.
Yep, thank you. So
it's Shraddha Devi Dasi writes, I have another question that you can, so it's about the following verse from Vaishnava K, verse 19. First of all, where can I find this text? As I saw it in a footnote in your Shikshastakam commentary. It's the beautiful verse, Kirtana Prabhave Smarana Svabhave, Se Kale Bhajana Nirjana Sambhav. Can you explain the essence of the meaning of this verse in relation to the devotional stage of bhava and one's real identity? Thank you. Pranam.
It's a famous poem of Bhaktisiddhanta, and it's been published a number of times in English and in Bengali. I don't know where you would find it, but look on the internet, Vaishnava K, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But he said to have wrote the poem after spending a very long time in solitary bhajan. So the Vaishnava case, what kind of Vaishnava are you? Is what he's saying. You're sitting like Haridas Thakur, but you're not Haridas Thakur. And so this is a glorification of those who can sit in bhajan. And he could sit in bhajan, but he came out of the bhajan to speak about what bhajan is not, and to glorify those who are capable of sitting in solitary bhajan like Haridas Thakur, and how to proceed and conduct oneself in such a way that one can end up in that position rather than artificially assuming that position, which was apparently taking place at the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhakti Vinod. And as a result, unqualified people sitting for meditation, especially the kind of meditation in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, can lead to a very bad example. And so this was what he was perceiving. So this is the context in which the poem comes out. But the point that he makes in this particular line is that the power, the kirtana prabhavi, the power of kirtan, will bring about a smaranam. Kirtana prabhavi, smarana svabhave. So meditating on one's svabhav, one's inherent nature, that it will arise, the inherent nature will arise in the context of kirtan, and meditation on it will naturally follow. And the kirtan will energize the meditation will energize the kirtan going forward. But so that is the method, rather than sitting down and trying to meditate and not giving due preference to Nam Sankirtan, the kirtan. And of course, he had a dynamic idea of kirtan, which was to glorify Krishna's abode, the nature of the ideal. He used to say, I spoke 80% about what it's not and 20% about what it is, in order that it might be properly understood, because it may lend itself to misunderstanding. The Parakiya Bhav, for example, of Braj. So he engaged disciples very much in a dynamic form of kirtan. We're the result of that, right? Publishing literature, sharing the books, and so on and so forth. Speaking to others about this ideal and philosophy, theology. So Kirtana Prabhava, by the power of Kirtan, was his idea that this Swarup Shakti will manifest as the first of all the heart, as Mahaprabhu teaches, the heart becomes cleansed. That's then as it becomes cleansed proportionally, then one will be able to sit and do bhajan and enter into Bhava Bhakti. So those are some brief thoughts on that, given that we're a little over time. I hope it's helpful. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Or Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Oh, Premanande, Haribo.
Ibo.
Srila Guru Maharaj ki jai.
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 Thank you, everyone. See you next week. I think. Haribo, Guru Vakya. Haribo.
Haribo.
Haribo. My pleasure. And congratulations. Haribo. So I just want to write to Haribol, Harijan.
Haribo.